So that's sort of the size of it. What do you do?
What am I doing? Well, I'm at a funny place with the Tai Chi because I'm learning a new form. But I learn so slowly, I almost don't learn, but I'm
Isn't that the way of Tai Chi?
yeah, yeah.
What was that again? Like where?
But I'm still doing the old form, and then I'm doing a little, what's it called? Xingyi, which is more like that.
Really?
Yeah.
What's this about?
It's good for my Parkinson's, because the Tai Chi's good for my balance. But for the Parkinson's, it's good to do some quick stuff.
Why is that?
Why is that? Because one of the, I don't know. There's so much stuff on the internet.
Is it?
I like it. I like. I like that. And I like the part with the feet too, where which is a kind of a slam in the shoulder.
You mean you would hit me?
Yeah, it would
Knock me out?
displace you if I did it right. I also love this. Like, let's get sideways. This, well, it could be like this. And then just expand into me. There, this pressure.
Wow.
Yeah. Feels good. Yeah.
This is Simone.
This is Steve, my compost master.
We met in New York. Last century. And after a kind of rough acquaintanceship,
Really?
I had a rough time. You intimidated me pretty much.
I was just 10 years old.
And we became friends. And Simone suggested that we write a book together.
An encyclopedia.
An encyclopedia of everything we know for sure.
And no research.
You just write it.
Just write it.
Yeah. Anyway, we've been dancers together now for, we must have met in the early 60s. Around 1960, let's say, for easy.
Yeah, 1960.
Yeah.
And let's call this 2015. It's easier.
Yeah. Do the math. Do the math.
Do the math.
Do the math.
Do the math. Hello. 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 The minute I saw this arrangement, I thought, oh good, I'm going to get to go on the floor. Which I couldn't really do when I come to performances here. It's a nice floor.
The first time I saw Simone doing that, it was in the Merce Cunningham studio after a class. She was the only Merce Cunningham student to finish off the technique class by crawling on the floor.
I remember I couldn't even see what people were doing. I couldn't even perceive what we were supposed to do, let alone do it.
Didn't you say that you had trouble with left and right in the technique class? Because Cunningham would be your teacher and he would say, okay, now, on the right side. And you were supposed to, he was talking to your right side and your right side was supposed to mirror. But you realized that he was lifting his left arm.
But you know, there are people in Australia who don't use left and right, have no concept of left and right. They have north, south.
So your arm would be your north arm?
Right now it would be my west arm.
Your west arm.
Of course, you're from out of town.
And then Simone told the story about how looking in the mirror, the same thing was happening, that the body was reversed. It's something that nobody else questioned. And Simone not only questioned it, but she asked, if it reverses right and left,
why don't it reverse top and bottom?
we don't know. This is more material for the book.
Well, will there be discourses in our book, or just?
I think it's up to us.
Well, yeah.
But I don't think at our ages the book should only be questions.
You mean we have something to say?
I mean, some conclusions.
Conclusions. I'm more far from conclusions now than I was then. I like really open. I like open form. I like when it's not even. You know when you can't remember dreams? And you kind of remember maybe there was a vapor over there and some stuff here that was problematic, and that's about what you remember. Do you ever have that experience?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because it's in another language that we can't remember it. It's in the vapor and murkiness and a twist language.
Well, I like really tight, finished, logical conclusions. And I like dreams where I understand exactly what's happening. And that are, my favorite dreams are about space. And this would be a very good example of the kind of dream that I would have, this kind of space. Because if we come down here, and this would be the beginning of the dream, that I would...
John would walk in through the door.
This would be the beginning of the dream. That I would be, can you hear me?
Yeah. Absolutely. You're
This would be the beginning. And then somehow, I wouldn't know how, I would be entering. And there would be this space, and it would be defined by units. Each one of which...
Newness.
Units.
Newness.
Units.
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 Units, I get it. The space should be defined by units.
And so each one of units define the space, and the space goes on into a kind of murky distance. And it's too complex to quite understand. And so then the dream would be progressing through and having experiences along the way. So something would happen. Something.
Ooh, I like that part.
This.
No, this was the good part. So back to the encyclopedia. Well, in a way, Wikipedia is like the encyclopedia we had in mind. Only ours was exclusive, which is quite different.
But the actual proposal, the means, is very wiki-ish.
Yes, it is. I'm going to go over to these kids over here.
Simone was once my nearest neighbor.
Once when I was living in an abandoned chicken coop with a bunch of people, Steve showed up and put down a wooden floor for us.
Simone showed me where to pick mint, which I picked and dried and took with me on my trip to Montreal. Coming from Montreal into Vermont, I was stopped at the border. I was taken off a Greyhound bus. The bus was made to wait while the border men went through my bedroll, my backpack, my bag, and they found the mint. And they said, "Aha!" And they took it into the office. And I couldn't believe what was happening because I realized I was about to be detained for mint. I think the Border Patrol had been told to watch out for marijuana, and they didn't know at that time in this state what it was.
Things are heavier now. Somebody was taken off of an airplane for writing mathematical, what do you call it?
Formula?
Formula. And a passenger next to him thought it looked suspicious.
I think all of this should go into the book.
What are some of the things? Well, one of the things that should go into the book is that you don't take a nap on the compost.
Why not?
Because you mash it down and it won't aerate properly.
It can be fluffed.
Oh, well, you gave me a bawling out for taking a nap on the compost.
I knew I was going to have to fluff it.
Okay, I got you.
I like compost a lot. It seems like something you can do that's going to happen anyway.
I find it so magical when the compost heats up. I very seldom have that happen, but when it does, and you put your arm down through the compost and it's hot in there, it's like it's come to life. It practically can speak to you. And then when it's all composted, it's the fluffiest, most delicate soil. It's perfect. You can see how rich it is, how creamy it is. never danced together, have we, Steve? Well, I don't dance, really.
Are you inviting me to dance?
Well, I don't know. I'm inviting you, but then I don't think I can dance. How do you do it anyway?
Can you do that twice?
Or you do it?
If you can do it twice, you've got structure.
Or maybe you go. Or you do a.
That Merce Cunningham training still showing. What made you want to dance? You had perfectly good other art forms to play with.
Oh, I think it was meeting Anna Halprin just at that moment when she was starting to go into a whole new phase of her work, and she was young and into it and excited about it and passionate about it and smart. And I think any wonderful teacher I would have met when I was 21, I would have gone into that form.
Did you see her this week?
No,
She didn't come down?
was going to come down, and then she had a flu and didn't come. But I talked to her on the phone, and I think that movie's really beautiful. I don't like the title very much, but I think that the movie is really strong, and it's one project. And you see the development of the project, and it's she's working with dancers, and she's working with the sculptures of Rodin, who I never was very much into until I saw a lot of pictures of a lot of his small pieces and a lot of the pieces that never got made into metal. And
oh, you mean the just the plaster?
just a plaster, or you really get the feel of the clay. And they're sort of like like yeah.
I feel like this is how a potter might do abstract expressionism.
Yes, except that they're figures that are reaching and diving and becoming each other and
Flowing, a lot of flow.
a lot of flow, and raw with a good eye and a good hand. And Anna was working with the dancers, getting the movement going from the center and working with them technically, and then also with what she was trying to do with the piece. And they were on the shore, and the waves were crashing up, and they were kind of ecstatic with the environment, and it's really beautifully shot. I think it's a good film. There's also a film about Chen Min Chen, who Deborah Cohen studied, Deborah Hay studied with a little bit. I wish I had.
Did you study with Chen?
I studied with Marshall Ho.
Ah. Was he a Chen Manching student?
No, he...
Different...
The style is related. Chen Manching was a great master. Marshall Ho was a very good teacher. Marshall Ho had been a boxer, and he was a little bit like this. But he knew how to teach a posture that was more correct than his own, which is interesting.
More correct than his own.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because you look at him and he'd be like that, and then he'd tell you, no, not that. There you go. Why did you get into dance?
I was a little bit interested in microbiology. But at the university, the microbiology teacher was a shitty teacher. And in fact, the whole freshman program there was a shitty program. It's the University of Arizona at Tucson. It was like 2 blocks from my house, so it was the only university I knew. I thought going to university was going to be like getting on a really good train and going really fast. And I got to this university and it was, what time is the train showing up? Train hasn't been, we don't know when the train's coming. And then the few cars that came by, little half trains, and they were going really slow. My English teacher was an asshole. And all I remember, and this is something, I liked English. All I remember him saying was that he and his friends were very particular about who they made friends with.
About what?
Very particular about who they made friends with. This was a lecture given in class. So I felt like he was teaching Snobism 101. And he didn't give good remarks about papers. Anyway, so the only thing left in my life at that point that I had enjoyed was a couple of years of Graham technique in Tucson. And so I decided to see what the American Dance Festival at New London was like. Graham was there. And also Cunningham was there, and Simone was there, and Pearl Lang was there. Doris Humphrey was there at that time. So it was like going to get a close-up view of all these people whose photographs I had admired.
Mm-hmm. But more than that.
Well, that's what it turned out to be, more than that.
And was there one of them that you especially connected with?
Well, the biggest mystery was Cunningham. And it's still the mystery that he provides us with today, which is why? Why would anybody make dance that way? And so after that first summer, an encounter, I studied with Cunningham that summer. And that was my question. All this talk about chance procedures that was around the work, trying to explain the work to people like me who had just come from Arizona and walked in and saw this manifestation. And I loved the company. The people. I was actually staying in the same dorm that they were housed in. That company was housed in, and a few of us, what do you call us, interns were there too. They were fantastic. They were so happy. I think it was the first summer that they had been invited into the central dancing area of modern dance at that time. So they were there, and they were very happy. And they were dancing beautifully, and they were dancing beautiful dances. And they were causing consternation because the modern dance establishment was holding other ideas. So it was that moment in art forms where ideas clash. I mean, this is well known, so probably all of you know this stuff too, but the modern dance was very human-based. It was about our emotions and our histories and our sagas and our myths, psychology. There were a few people who weren't into that. I think Nikolai was sort of an outlier. He was sort of a science fiction modern dancer. He designed all his own costumes and music and dance and sets and had a theater of his own, so he could kind of do that. But the others were on tour most of the time, and for their dancing. And so the work had to be portable, and generally the impact of it was emotional and sagas of different kinds were enacted in dance.
And the characters were bigger than life.
Characters were heroic, mythic, and there were some things that weren't like that. I mean, the Life of the Bees. Doris Humphrey made a dance called Life of the Bees, which enacted the.
Who did that?
Doris Humphrey.
Uh-huh.
And it was sort of like making much of beehive life. The queen and anyway. And when it was first done, it didn't have music, so it was done in silence, which was pretty radical. Anyway, I liked the radical side of things. Cunningham was more radical. I went away, I got a job, I worked for about 6 months, and I suddenly had this revelation. that it doesn't matter how the dance is made. The most important thing is how it's danced, and it has to be danced somehow. And so the style of Cunningham, which was very conservative, like formally radical, but technically conservative, and he had been very much affected by ballet and Graham, and the fact that he arrived from Washington, where he was, I think, basically had been a tap dancer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, he had a tap dancing teacher, is the teacher I can remember him
Okay.
talking about. But I think he was interested in dance. I think he was studying modern dance when Graham saw him. He went, after that meeting in Seattle, he went to New York. He got there in the early autumn, and by late autumn he was on Broadway in her company. So he was he had this incredible shoot to a very special place. And then I think he had to look around and figure out what to do. And one of the things, Graham sent him to ballet classes, saying that her choreography wouldn't develop his legs. And he was definitely somebody who was a jumper. And so he needed that technical work.
Thin and
Yeah.
kind of like a Giacometti.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you were in the company at one point.
Yeah, a couple of years later. That was a shock. I loved that company. I loved watching it dance. Once I got in it, I couldn't see it dance anymore. It was like, of my dance pleasures, deep pleasures, joining that company removed one of the deepest. Although it was another and not unpleasant experience to be in it, but just not until I left the company again, and some years had passed. In '86, I saw the company perform in Albuquerque, and no, it was Santa Fe, an even higher altitude. The company had come from St. Louis, Missouri. They had been there for a while. Nice around sea level performing space. They were from New York, of course, based in New York, sea level. And then suddenly they were in Santa Fe, New Mexico. They got there in the middle of the night. A lot of them had the flu. They had a horrible day getting the first show together. And I saw them that night.
Because you just happened to be
I
there
just happened to
at
be
Santa
there, and I just happened to remember it was '86 because that was the year I premiered a solo that I premiered there.
Yeah.
So,
Could you dance that now somehow a little bit, however you could?
my solo,
Yeah.
can you play the Goldberg variations?
Yeah. The best I can.
Okay. So I looked at the company that night and I thought, it's a great company, admirable company, but I don't know. And later on, met up with some of the dancers and found out what had been going on. That they had just been smashed by this flu. Only one dancer didn't have the flu. And they'd gotten in at midnight, the trip had been delayed, and they were suddenly dancing at this altitude. I think Santa Fe must be a mile high or so.
Meanwhile, I'll do a solo that I did at Reed College.
In 1986, or?
No, it would have been 1954. Circa. And go ahead. This was to an Italian Italian music, like chamber music of I don't know what century. So you can go, keep talking.
Okay, I'll keep talking. So I found out, and then I went the next night and had a very nice seat in the center of the hall. And it was an evening of, it was an event, so it was an evening of kind of collaged elements of various works that he had made. And all of a sudden, I recognized the steps and had the feeling, this bizarre feeling, which maybe only somebody in my position could feel. I saw this guy doing steps that my body recognized. So I saw myself, or felt myself, performing that dance. And they're Mercer's steps, so I felt his influence on that situation. And I had this strange triangulation, sitting there immobilized in my seat, feeling the dance that I'm watching and knowing was Mercer's. And it was a dance, it's called Suite for Five, and my part was just to do, not very difficult steps, but to just do them was what the Cunningham, as much instruction as one got. Just do the step. Don't interpret it, don't think about it, don't connect it. So the feeling of doing it was one of trying to be empty of anything extra. Trying to be empty. And hoping one was empty enough. And wondering if there was anything else, including this thinking about being empty, that one could get rid of. And a funny feeling of being, it's a little bit like being suddenly naked in front of a bunch of people if I were to suddenly lose my clothes. I mean, I'm an old hand at that kind of thing. And I'm sure this is California, and it wouldn't shock you all that much, but still there would be socially a little odd, a little strange if I was suddenly nude. That dance had that feeling of I'm not here.
Has that feeling of I'm not here?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm not commenting on your dance. I'm still talking about Cunningham.
Oh, yeah, I understand that, kind of. I'm thinking of certain photographs I've seen of Cunningham himself, and I think that maybe he trained his dancers, I'm not here, but when he danced,
He was there.
He was there.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Certainly in photographs he was there.
Yeah.
But it's his work. He could
Yeah,
do...
I know it.
And it was not my work.
It's hard to have dancers do one's work.
You were the other great teacher of that when you did your first solo evening. Well, it wasn't a solo evening, but it was of only your work.
You mean Planet?
Hmm?
Planet?
Planet? Is that the name of it?
Where everybody
Really?
was crawling and standing up and crawling.
No. No, I mean the one at Yoko's loft.
Oh, the dance constructions.
Dance constructions.
Yeah.
And you said, don't interpret my work. I work very hard on my ideas, and I don't want anybody else's ideas in my work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But it's impossible not to have ideas. Well, you at Cunningham were asking people to stop a life process. It's like, do not breathe while you're dancing my work.
Well, it's changed a little bit now, but not really. Because now what's hard is when we do those pieces, if I do it with dancers, they've gone through all the somatic stuff. So everything is
Now they...
about to touch, now I'm touching, now I'm feeling bone. Now we used to just...
So we didn't know we were touching in the way that they do now.
Well, we did. It's like, but it was like you pick up a glass of water to have a drink of water. You don't like, oh.
Yes, you do.
You see what I mean? And I remember the first time I saw people that I was going to be performing with, improvising with, and they were doing contact improvisation, and I went up and touched them, and I went, whoop!
Because?
Because they had become a particular kind of medium. It's quite wonderful. But it was a surprise. And Christy Swain was one of those people. I think that when I think of contact improvisation and your role in it, it's like,
Indeed.
Thank you, Simone. Gosh. That's got to be in the book. I don't think it should have been a book. I think there should be some other medium which involves the sensations of human bodies and the color and sound of human perceptions. And it should almost be like a filmic medium that we should work in. But more than filmic, because it should should.
I love it.
It should have some of that in it.
Yeah. Says, oh, I forget which Tai Chi teacher, maybe Chen Min Ching, says that your whole body is your hand.
Oh, wow. What does that mean?
It means that when you're doing whatever you're doing with your hand, you
The body's.
yeah. Well, it can be mechanical, but if it's an image, then let's shake hands.
You think that's what he meant?
Something like that, yeah.
I never saw him do that.
But then it's
He was
like,
always about this far away from everybody.
yeah,
who was-
and then it's a martial art.
So why martial art?
Why martial art?
Why is all this wisdom encapsulated in a martial art?
Because everything's got teeth and claws in some way or another. And some of us are more the teeth and claws part of the community. And there's enjoyment in it.
I mean, everything's got teeth and claws, okay. It's also, everything's got skin and fur. Everything's got like guts and organs. Everything's made of water. So if there's that variety, why is it martial? That is the encapsulation for the wisdom.
Martial is just one thing among so many others.
Well, that's my point.
Well, yes, but I like it. So much.
Is it the stimulation?
No, it's thoughts about what starts tribal and ends up global. And when it's tribal, it's one thing, and then it slowly makes a mess. But when it's tribal, you're living on a... Oh, never mind.
I mean, if it's tribal, it's like this. And martial is this.
Yes, within the tribe, it's like this. But the territory can only sustain so many rabbits and so many moose. And at some point, you send one of the young martial artists out who might come back and might not.
Why do you do that?
You do that because somebody's been taking too much water out of the spring.
All right, okay. This is like how it gets to be more than tribal. Or is that within the tribe? I mean, the Anasazi, when I first saw the Anasazi, I was enthralled with their living situation. And then I began to look at it, and it seemed to me like it was like architectural paranoia.
Well, they were living under that rock.
Well, that's just one of their sites, but in the smaller sites, they had towers. And towers were a common feature and still exist. The original towers, some of them exist. And it was like, we got to keep an eye on each other. We can't trust in our tribe the garden and the water.
And in Italy, before Italy was unified, all the city-states were building these towers, and every 6 months, one city-state would attack the other city-state, and then they'd have the power, and then they'd have it for 6 months, and then 3 months later, another city-state. These little city-states were always attacking each other, and every time, there'd be 2 or 3 of the young people would die. And so finally they unified Italy, and those wars ended, and then Italy went to war with Austria.
So as the perspective gets bigger, the wars go further.
That's one way of looking at it. That's the way I look at it. But that's because I'm a martial artist.
That's my question. I like one thing about the 60s.
About what?
The 60s.
Yeah.
Which is that there was a general proposal to end war. Yeah. It was seriously proposed. There was a serious proposal for love and peace. And then the 70s and the backlash.
All I dare to hope for is as much mercy as possible.
Your haircut's great from here.
There's some kind of thin spots, I think.
No, no,
Yeah.
the whole thing is really shapely.
Well, that's good. It cheers me up when my hair is nice. See, if I had done contact, I would have known what to do. I would have rolled my weight into your center.
I don't think they're doing that anymore, Simone. I think that's the old style.
What are they doing now?
I don't know what they're doing now. Hard to keep up with it.
Well, I've got a 1998 car.
I've got a 1939 body. We're never going to write that book, Simone.
No, I know.
But we are, I think, dedicated to continuing to do the research.
Yeah. Yeah.
so we know less and less. The hypothetical book is getting smaller and smaller.
Well, yeah, but the few parts are further apart, so there's more, it's also bigger in space.
In breadth, yeah, right, okay. I think it's time.
Yeah,
I think it's
I
time.
think so.
We think it's time. We thank you for coming.
National radical treasures. Thank you. The house will open for seating in about 20 minutes. The box office is located just outside if you don't have your tickets yet, and the bar is open. Thank you again.